to week 5's lectures on Wuthering Heights. In today's lecture, I'm going to talk about the nature of Gothic terror, fantasy, and violence in Emily Bronte's novel. Let's start with Emily Bronte's life in her home, Haworth Parsonage. Emily Brontë lived not in a mythical moorland fastness, but in a rapidly industrializing world. Her home, Haworth Parsonage, looked down on a small Yorkshire mill town and backed into the moors. This is the view held by Professor John Bowen, and he is concentrating on a particular myth which is about the moors in which Emily Brontë grew up. What he is trying to argue here is that there isn't a kind of mythical permanence to the world in which Emily Brontë lived. The reality of Emily Bronte's childhood and youth is a place which was developing in a rapid pace. It is an industrial world. Yorkshire was a mill town, and the mill town was adjacent to the moors. So you had modernity on the one hand and these vast landscape of moors. So there is wild natural beauty on the one hand and the world of mills and factories on the other. This point made by the critic also suggests to us that Haworth Parsonage was at a kind of crossroads, a symbolic crossroads, where it looked at both sides of the world of wild elemental beauty and the man-made world which was full of progress and industrial development. The bleakly beautiful West Yorkshire moors have often helped to define in important ways how readers and critics have interpreted Wuthering Heights as a strange and wild book about a remote and unfamiliar landscape. This particular critical perspective exemplifies the ways in which the novel has been interpreted by countless readers. Readers and critics perceive Wuthering Heights as a unique book, a very strange, bizarre, wild book. And it is very interesting to see how the epithets that one would use with a landscape, especially the landscape of Yorkshire moors, is transferred to this novel, Wuthering Heights. One can talk about a strange and wild landscape, but in the context of Wuthering Heights, the same descriptive terms of strangeness and wildness is used to illustrate this novel. So there is a kind of a parallel between the book and the land from which it emerged. And I would once again want to direct your attention to the words strange and wild and remote and unfamiliar and make a connection between these adjectives and the idea of the Gothic, a concept that we have been discussing and which kind of centers on ideas of the bizarre, strange, and something which is not within normal bounds. So you can see how this book has already gravitated towards the Gothic subgenre. Yet it is important to remember that Haworth was a modern working town with several mills and a good deal of industrial unrest. Although it might have seemed distant from London, it was not so far from Manchester, the shock city of the age, and the bustling metropolis of Leeds. John Bowen here once again reminds us that in addition to the remote and unfamiliar landscape which immediately comes to our mind, Haworth was also a modern working town with a lot of mills and industrial agitation going on. You can see how connected it was to Manchester and Leeds. It wasn't very far from these places which were seeing a lot of rapid industrial growth and increasing population. So, how do we connect this with this book, Wuthering Heights? We don't see any major reference to the bustling industrialization that was impacting on the lives of the people involved in this novel. Yet, there is a thematic, symbolic concept which one can connect from this book to the industrial world and vice versa, which is the ambition and the drive of Heathcliff under that romantic rage, under that passion of Heathcliff, is hidden the drive to agglomerate, the drive to accumulate on the part of Heathcliff, especially when he comes back after his travels and starts his revenge on the people who have wronged him in the Heights, in Wuthering Heights, as well as in Thrushcross Grange. So there is a parallel between the ideas within Wuthering Heights and the concept which drives industrialization, which is greed and accumulation. It was part of a world in rapid motion that witnessed the dramatic mid-Victorian transformation of nature and work in both town and country, changes powered by the railways for which Brontë worked and by the mills that surrounded them. So, John Bowen again writes about the transformation that went through Great Britain. The transformation had an impact in both the villages as well as in towns, and one of the key transformation was embodied in the figure of the railways. Keeping in mind all these concepts about industrialization, the location of Haworth Parsonage and the Yorkshire moors, let's now turn to the novel Wuthering Heights and look at the nature of terror exemplified in this novel. Wuthering Heights creates a world of passionate intensities in which particular events are burned on the characters and readers' memories beyond reason, measure, or reserve. Terror stalks the book and defines so many of its central relationships, concerned as it is with the ecstatic, eerie, and mad. From the nature of the rhetoric, you can understand the intensity of this novel. It is a passionate novel. Cathy and Heathcliff embody that passion to the extreme, and some of the events in the novel, such as the ghost of Cathy, the child ghost of Cathy trying to get into Wuthering Heights, the house, is very, very powerful and poignant. So some scenes in the novel stay in the minds of the readers, and these are scenes of a lot of intensity. And you can see how there is an there's a subtext of terror, and that terror seemed to kind of stalk the characters in the novel and the central relationships. Uh, Heathcliff and Cathy's relationship is full of passion, but there is also an undercurrent of violence and intense emotions such as jealousy and revenge. And you can see that madness, the associated ideas of extreme emotions such as madness, stalks many of the characters' behavior in this particular novel. The book plays with death, quotes death, stages death, or when Heathcliff breaks through the side of Catherine's coffin or hangs his wife Isabella's dog from a hook in the garden. So this idea of death is almost omnipresent in this novel. Characters are treated brutally, and death is also a kind of a recurrent phenomenon in this novel. Catherine, especially when she dies, you can see how Heathcliff finds it very, very difficult to let her go, and how he tries to get into her grave by breaking the side of Catherine's coffin. So these are some of the moments in the novel which stay in the minds of the readers. The other example there on the slide is to Isabella's dog, which Heathcliff kills. So you can see violence is ever present in this novel, alongside this much celebrated romance between, I would like to put that word within quotes, the romance between Catherine and Heathcliff. The book is fascinated by what lies at the limit of the human and is haunted by the forces of death and the diabolical, by compulsive modes of behavior, by infantile and sublimely powerful emotions, by the force of irresistible will, and by the terrible consequences done to human beings by radical evil. This book is full of animal spirits, ghosts, and those like Heathcliff about whom we can never be sure. The entire set of ideas on the slide can be used to talk about the character of Heathcliff. He is diabolical, he is evil, he is jealous, he's passionate, and he wants to wreak vengeance on the people who brutalized him when he was young. And he also wants to get avenged on Catherine because she married Linton instead of him. So the whole book is a series of violent acts committed by Heathcliff on the people who have wronged him. And you can see that Heathcliff is embodied by the notion of powerful emotions. Whatever he feels is not, the usual emotion. It's always in the extreme. At the time he spends with Cathy, the joy he experiences with Cathy when they run about on the moors is his most beloved memory from his childhood. And when he feels anger towards anybody who have slighted him, he experiences immense anger and wants to commit a lot of injury to that person who slights him, affects him. So whatever emotion is described in the novel is at the far end of the spectrum. And once again, there are references to spirits and ghosts, and even Heathcliff is described as a ghoul, a vampire, a ghost, a demon. So we don't really know as to the makeup of that diabolical mind of Heathcliff. Now let's look at Wuthering Heights and the opening episode. So in the opening episode of Emily's novel Wuthering Heights, the narrator Lockwood comes to Heathcliff's house, and he knocks at the house and wants to be let in. The place is overrun by snow, so the novel begins in a very inclemental weather, and that is again a Gothic trope. You have read Frankenstein by now, and you would remember how the storms are significant moments which indicate that something terrible might happen. And here we have this narrator Lockwood entering the Heights in stormy weather, and the novel also leads to the next nightmare when Lockwood imagines seeing the child ghost of Kathy trying to get in. So the setting is exciting and nightmarish, and this appearance of the ghost connects the novel with the Gothic. This narrator, Lockwood, is a southerner, and he comes to the northern part of the country to get a bit of peace and rest in this part of the country. And ironically, he doesn't get that because you can see how very unpleasant his experiences at Wuthering Heights are. So Lockwood gets trapped in this world, and that idea of entrapment is also an interesting Gothic motive. When he spends the night at the Heights, the house, he finds Kathy's diary written as a child and nods off while reading it. There follows a powerfully narrated nightmare in which an icy hand reaches to him through the window, and the voice of Catherine Linton calls to be let in. This is the most exciting moment in the novel for many. We have Lockwood spending the night at Wuthering Heights, a man who has come from the south of England. He has come to this part of the world to convalescence, and when he enters the world of Wuthering Heights, he picks up Kathy's diary, which he had written as a child, and he sleeps off while reading it, and he experiences a nightmare, and he imagines that Kathy is trying to get back into Wuthering Heights. And this moment is a fantastic Gothic moment in the novel when Lockwood tries to prevent this ghost from entering, and in that kind of clash between Lockwood and the child, because Lockwood is trying to shut the window against this child ghost, we can read that the child's hand gets caught in the window. So it's a powerful and violent moment in the novel, and it's a nightmare for Lockwood. The vision seems to prefigure what he will later discover about the history of Kathy and Heathcliff. Half in jest, Lockwood tells Heathcliff that Wuthering Heights is haunted. So that scene, that nightmare from Lockwood's night at Wuthering Heights, is a foreshadowing of the kind of events that he will come to know through Nellie Dean. Nellie Dean is the housekeeper at Wuthering Heights, and she is also a dominant narrator, in fact, the dominant narrator of this novel. So we have Kathy's voice also emerging from the diary. So certain voices are also there, but the most dominant narrator is that of Nellie Dean, followed by Lockwood. So the next morning, Lockwood tells Heathcliff, half in jest. In fact, he's only half joking. The other half is that he is really serious when he says that Wuthering Heights is haunted. And some critics say that Kathy has returned to the wrong person on that night. She should have gone to Heathcliff and asked to be let into the house. The novel, centered as it is on a house, seems to exploit in a new way the Gothic idea that entering an old building means entering the stories of those who have lived in it before. It's a fantastic way to describe the nature of the Gothic. Gothic novels have a fascination with houses, castles, old buildings, mansions, forts. And in this novel, Wuthering Heights, the key house is that of this Wuthering Heights, which is owned by Mr. Earnshaw, and eventually Heathcliff appropriates this house. So this house is Gothic in nature. It has a lot of mysteries. Its master is a very strange character. When I refer to the word master, I'm referring to Heathcliff, because Mr. Earnshaw was a kindly man, and he was the one who brought Heathcliff into the house, this orphan who came and changed the way in which people lived there. So the presence of the outsider in this house is a trajectory which we can also unpack at a later time. But here, let's remember that Wuthering Heights is a Gothic space. People get locked in. Heathcliff was locked in once when the house had visitors from the Grange, Thrushcross Grange, and Kathy gets locked up. So the idea of locking up people is a Gothic concept, and that happens within Wuthering Heights. There's brutality, there's violence, there's a lot of swearing. So it's not a very domestic space, because domesticity has its associated connotations of peace, affection, romance, and love. Wuthering Heights is also a highly organized and rationally planned novel with a complex time scheme and several interlocking narrators. It sets its extraordinary actions in a vividly realized family history and landscape. It's a very well structured novel, that is quite apparent. Very rationally planned in the sense that events are connected to one another, and there are consequences for events that happen within it. Again, it's a well planned novel because several generations tales are connected in the story, and there are several narrators, points of view, people who tell the story. We have voices such as Kathy's narrating experiences from the past, and it's a tale of a particular family. It's also a tale of a landscape of a particular region. So even though it talks about Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange, we can see how these houses become symbolic in the way families evolve and the traditions the family follows. Wuthering Heights, the novel, is fascinated by the power of fantasy, particularly erotic fantasy, in people's lives. Isabella thinks of Heathcliff as a hero of romance until she learns the truth of his brutality, but those fantasies take their place within a carefully plotted story about inheritance, intermarriage, and theft. Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights is a figure of fantasy. For example, he is such a figure to Isabella Linton. Isabella thinks of Heathcliff as a hero of a romance. He is tall, dark, and handsome. He is rich. So when Heathcliff returns to the Heights, he comes as a man who is wealthy and civilized. That's the apparent aura that Heathcliff has, and Isabella quickly falls in love. She doesn't know that he has come back to take vengeance on Linton and Catherine, on Hindley. Hindley is the son of Mr. Earnshaw. He wants to make sure that everybody who have thwarted him pay for their actions against him. Mistakenly, Isabella thinks that he is an ideal partner, falls in love, and Heathcliff quickly marries to wound Catherine. And gradually, once she's married, she learns the truth of his brutality, and you can see how very thorough and quick Heathcliff is to take his vengeance. And this kind of character of Heathcliff makes him a Gothic villain. Some call him a Byronic hero who's dark and brooding, and who is taking vengeance for the society's wrongs against him. There is also an eroticism around Heathcliff. He embodies desire. He is an elemental figure who kind of provokes the most primitive emotions in the people around him. So be it rage or desire or passion, if it's Catherine. So Wuthering Heights is complex because of its central character and his relationship to Catherine. The erotic is not separated from the economic and the passage of power and land across generations. Emily Brontë was fascinated by extreme emotions, radically opposing mental and social forces, and the creation of moments of moral revelation and transformation that were typical both of Gothic fiction and Victorian melodrama. But she could control and ironize and discipline those energies to serious purpose. This novel can be classified as both Victorian melodrama, because lots of dramatic events happen, extreme emotions are displayed to the fore, and it can also be classified as Gothic fiction. There is an impression that this novel is about the pure passion of Heathcliff and Catherine, but that's not just the message of this particular novel. The erotic fantasy is not entirely cut off from the economic trajectories that are crisscrossing this novel. Heathcliff is the outsider figure when he's brought to Wuthering Heights. He's an orphan. He doesn't belong to the Earnshaw's bloodline. So when Catherine becomes close to Heathcliff, at the right moment, she's introduced to Thrushcross Grange, and she falls in love with Linton, the heir to the Thrushcross Grange property, and she is torn between these two figures, Heathcliff and Linton. And in one of those most crucial moments in the novel, she declares to Nellie that though she is in love with Linton, Heathcliff is like the rocks. She is Heathcliff. She kind of identifies herself completely with this raw energy, the passion that Heathcliff is. But Heathcliff, who is kind of eavesdropping on the scene, doesn't stay long to hear the second half of her declaration of love. He runs away the moment he hears that she is in love with Linton, and he goes away, and he kind of comes back later to take his revenge. But what I'm trying to point out here is this, that even though there are trajectories of romance and passion, there are social forces at play. Wuthering Heights doesn't really take in Heathcliff. He doesn't belong. The family doesn't really think that Catherine should marry Heathcliff because he's a nobody. There's no surname. People do not know who his parents are. So it's considered the right thing when Catherine marries Linton from Thrushcross Grange, so that property is neatly exchanged, and everything follows the rules and regulations of society. However, Heathcliff comes back, and everything is thrown out of gear by his trajectory of revenge, which also has this crucial end point of snatching away, taking away by any means whatsoever the property that belongs to Hindley, who is the heir, the legitimate heir to the property. But you can see how he cheats him of his inheritance. Hindley becomes deprived of his rights, and Heathcliff becomes the master of Wuthering Heights. Thank you for watching. I'll continue in the next session.